Alright, so first things first, we got this little water pickup adapter, if you want to call it, but it helps guide it, and it's got little rings in there that help seal it to that water tube inside the bottom of that midsection. So we're just gonna, and it also helps to have just a nice clean area, but I'm setting everything the direction that I took it off from, so I'm keeping it oriented correctly so I don't mess it up. But so we got that off. Next thing we want to do is take off this seal here, which can be very stubborn at times. And usually if it isn't cracked and stuff like this, if it still looks like looks good, then you can reuse them, but it's recommended to replace them. So you can kind of get under this front or top lip here, kind of just work your way around with a screwdriver and get it off of that seat, and then you just pull this up and off drive shaft. Next thing is we got 4 10mm bolts right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, one on each corner. We're going to take those off. Now it's also important to kind of see how this is oriented. So we want this water tube to be on the prop side of it, not the shift shaft side of it. So, you know, kind of just keep your orientation there. So for this, I use an impact, but I take it very, very slowly. I don't absolutely just hammer it. Now putting them back on, I don't use an impact. I use a ratchet, and that's just so you know, I don't end up stripping it or over tightening it, stuff like that. But taking them off, you can kind of be a little bit rougher, but it just saves a little bit of time. There's no specific order to take them off in or to put them back on. I usually, putting them back on, I like to kind of cross them a little bit, you know, like a crisscross pattern. I like to tighten them down a little bit more even. Don't know if that makes a difference, but I just do it. So after we get them 4 bolts out, what we can do is we can kind of wiggle this. It'll pop off, and we just slide that up, and we can pull it off. So it just slides up off the shaft, and then in there's our impeller. So we're gonna pull it out. It's gonna be very hard to get out of there. You kind of take a screwdriver, go in from the top here and push down. Makes it a little bit easier, but we're just gonna pop it out. Now we can kind of inspect our impeller. You can tell it's pretty worn. It's seen some better days. On a newer impeller, you know, the fins just stick straight out. They're just straight out like that. So if it's sitting like that, it's probably time to replace it. But I'll show you the new one compared to the old one, and I'll tell you which way to orient them. But in the meantime, we got a key right here, which there's a little slot right there on the shaft. That's where that sits, and I'll tell you how to line all that up. I'll lay that off to the side. And we got a new gasket, which is this right here, and we got a new plate and we got a new metal gasket that goes underneath. Now I took it off like this, so I'm going to lay it down exactly how I took it off to keep it oriented. Here's all our new parts. All of this right here, got that new gasket. Here's that metal one, and then that plate. Here's the new impeller compared to the old one. See, and then here's that new seal compared to the old one. See how it's all cracked and stuff. There's that new one. This right here is actually a tool for when you're putting this seal back on. You put that seal on and you can slide this down, and whenever it pushes against that housing, that's how you know that seal's seated on there correctly, and we'll walk through that. Here's a new key. Now these O-rings, I'm not going to be messing with these O-rings today. Those would go down in here on this drive shaft seal. And then these two little washers are for the lower unit. What we want to do first is I always like to clean off any dirt, kind of make, you just want a nice clean mating surface there. So you can get a little bit of, you know, spray or something to spray on there. This isn't too bad. Now, this is a newer style gasket, so it's got a little extra hoop in there. But if you want to make sure that this gasket will fit, you can hold it up to the old one, and if all the holes line up, that's usually a good indicator that it's the right gasket. So we'll take this, we'll put it on there, and kind of line up the holes there. And here's another thing, you'll know if you're putting it on right, because if you have it on upside down, you go to line up the holes. So we got these two lined up, but that front one and that one aren't completely lined up. Now, same thing with this plate. I'm gonna look from the top now. Okay, so we got that little slit there, and it is going to go like this. Another way you can tell is before, if you put it on there and all the holes line up, even if they look like they kind of line up and they kind of don't, then it's not right. But if all the holes line up perfectly, like this, if all the holes line up perfectly, you got it on there correctly. And then they take your gasket here, and it'll go on. You kind of want this the RTV there to be facing up. So you put that on there, kind of line it up, and then what we're going to do next is we have some Mercury 24C, which is their grease. We're going to take our housing here, take the housing, and I'm going to be pretty liberal with the amount of grease I use. This is not only going to help us get the new impeller in there, but it's also going to help it from, like on the initial startup, to help it from, you know, ruining that impeller. So kind of get it all over the side. You just want to coat the whole thing. Coat the whole thing. Get the top of it. Once you have it coated, set that off to the side. I'm going to show you another little trick here. We're going to take our key. We're going to take a little dab of grease. We're going to put it on there. What this is going to do, instead of trying to do two things at once while putting this impeller on there. I'm trying to hold that on there. That grease holds that key on there. Got our gaskets on, got our key on, all that stuff. We're gonna take our new water or impeller here. If you can see on the inside there's a little cutout, and that's where that key is gonna go. Now it doesn't matter. On some impellers, only one side will be open. So then that's the way you'd put it on, but this side is open on both sides, so it doesn't matter which way you put it on. So we're just gonna take it. You wanna take it and line up that keyhole, line it up with the key. Kind of look down from the top, kind of use your fingers to get it lined up. And when it gets lined up, it'll just slide right down on there. Here's a little bit of a tricky part. So like I said, here's our housing. We got it greased up. We need to put this on. And here is where people get some things wrong. They'll put the impeller on the wrong way, or get it in the housing facing the wrong way. But the way you want to get the impeller in there is you want to take your drive shaft. So I'm going to take my drive shaft about right here, and I'm going to turn it clockwise. Clockwise is the key. Turn it to the right clockwise. That's the way you want to turn that shaft. As I'm turning this shaft clockwise, I'm going to be pushing down on this housing and turning it counterclockwise. And when that happens, that impeller gets in there, and that's the way you want it to be. That's the right direction. So now here's a little bit of a tricky part. Using a screwdriver might help you a little bit, but we got to line all these gaskets back up. They move a little bit when you're putting that on. Now it helps if you can get one started. These are all the same size bolt. So if you can get one bolt started, then all the other ones will kind of line up for themselves. The main thing is turning that shaft clockwise and turning the housing counterclockwise. That's the biggest thing. Otherwise, you won't pump any water because that impeller is facing the wrong way. But we're gonna get all 4 bolts started back on here. We got all our bolts on there. Got them started. Now we're just gonna start tightening them down. Now, I got all these tightened down, and I'm gonna start snugging these up. So, I'm not using a lot of force, but just kind of giving it a good little snug there. Just a good snug. A little bit tighter than a spark plug. But put a little grease around that right there, and I could put this back on, and it just pops on there. I'll put a little bit on the inside seam of that, and then I'll come and put some on the shift shaft right here. And then up here, you only want to put it on these splines. You don't want to put any on the top. There's a little hole right there, and if you get any in that hole, it is not going to go on. So I'm going to get a little bit more. I'm gonna just rub this in all the way around, and this just helps lubricate and makes it go on a little bit easier. After you do that, it's time to put the lower unit back on. We have our new little seal here. Don't want to forget that. So we'll put that on. And this is where this little piece comes in handy. You just slide it down and you push it on there. When it touches the bottom there, pull it back off. That's how you get that on properly. So now this lower unit's ready to go back on.